I've got Dan and Shelly on recording here, and we're going to review a couple questions. I haven't prepared them for the questions, so I'm going to actually let this be open where I'm going to ask one question. I'm going to wait for somebody to answer, and if nobody says anything, I'm going to go on to the second question and just, they're similar questions. Pick up anything you want to say, just throw it out there. So I'm basically going to give you the questions, and then we'll go until we stop, okay?
Okay.
Um, so, just as a background point, I've been interacting with the both of you close to 2 years, a pretty similar time frame. In the time that we've been interacting, um, what has seemed to change the most about me, which could be, one or two things, but how your perception of me has changed? Like, maybe I didn't change, but your perception of me changed, or things that you actually think you observed them change over time. Like you noticed one thing and then it changed, right? So that's the first kind of question. What has changed the most about me? So I'm pausing here in case anybody wants to jump in.
Okay, I'll jump in. I
Okay.
think you're more relaxed.
Okay. Keep going. Like say more why you would say that and how you made that assessment.
For when I first met you, you seemed like more relaxed than the average person, and you seemed more. Oh, you didn't just seem. You are more aware than the average person of how to assess the media, for instance, or health, or
Okay.
things like that. It seems like you're much more confident and relaxed about your the examinations that you've done into those things and the result or
Conclusion.
the conclusion. That's
Right.
the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Yes, the conclusion that you've come up with.
I'm also very psychic now. Anyway, go ahead.
You seem less interested in convincing random people of your conclusions and more interested in moving through the random people towards the people that you can make a difference in, or make a difference to, or who are interested in the same topics you are, who are open to the ideas that you have put together. It seemed like in the beginning when I met you, I wouldn't say that you were anxious or anything. When I say relaxed, I don't mean that you were the other extreme of anxious. I mean more that you seemed more, it seemed like you were more driven by trying to convince people of what you find important should be important for them too. And now I feel like you are less driven by that, and you're more driven to find the people who find the same things, or at least open to the same ideas that you are.
Okay, that was pretty clear, and I got the relaxed thing, and then a few other related points in there. Dan, do you want to comment on what she said, and then maybe add anything, or
Yeah, I can agree with what she said. I mean, you're more focused, and in that focus, you're more precise with your language, and it's more powerful for someone like me, because I think there was times in the past, and there might even still be moments currently, but more so in the past, where I took something you said the wrong way. Where now I think I can take what you say to me, and I realize you're not really trying to attack me or to you're just trying to get me to see how I'm being, how I'm operating. But I think you're so much more clear and precise about it, and focused and directed with it, that it's more powerful for me than it was maybe a year or two ago.
okay.
If that makes sense. Yeah, I'd agree with that too. I think also over time that we've seen some of your points of views haven't shifted, but ours may have shifted around you. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Your points of views have been very static, and as we're trying to figure you out,
we're realizing, okay, you are actually being genuine, or you're actually being sincere, or you're actually making a point and not attacking someone, or, you're actually making a very clear point. So I think my perception and what Dan was saying is our perceptions of you have adjusted to your clarity.
Okay. And Daniel brought up the idea of me being more precise. One of the odd things is when I'm introducing ideas that are unfamiliar to many people, part of how I do that can include humor, and there is a degree of confusion that is even essential, but to kind of just directly uh, acknowledge where there's confusion and deal with it. There can be very simple, clear things. No need for lengthy arguments or upset, or defenses. Anyway, I'm getting off of the main question. Dan, did you have? So you did add, Dan. You did add some other things that were related to what Shelley said, but you agree on the relaxed point in particular.
Absolutely, and I think as I also obviously the more I can relax, it allows me to see you being more relaxed too. So I might not have noticed that as much in the beginning when I first started talking to you. But also, it becomes easier for me, like we were talking about. I don't know if attack's the right word, but you're right. You got to throw that confusion in there. But what I've noticed with you is you're able to do that now, maybe in a way that's not as threatening to the other person, and that's only in the limited experience I have. You talking to me and talking to a few other people, but I've kind of noticed a difference in that regard too, if you understand what I mean.
Mm-hmm. And I was referring to confusion where. I can say I've been confused about blah blah blah, or well, I think there is some confusion about blah blah blah. I don't mean just creating. I didn't mean creating confusion at all. I meant pointing to potential misunderstandings or imprecision or confusion, presumptions, whatever, and then addressing them in some cases very directly, and like not even. Kind of in a casual way. So it's a relaxed way of saying, yeah, there's some confusion here, but we can either explore that and resolve it or not. Like, no big deal necessarily. Could be an interesting thing. Confusion could be interesting, right?
Yes.
Shelley definitely started into the second question. I guess Dan did too. Anybody want to comment on other things that that you've noticed change in me before I move on? Okay.
Your confidence.
Confidence. Okay. And I did hear you say that already. So you want to say a little more about it?
Yeah, I'm pretty much covered.
Dan, do you want to say a little bit more about my confidence?
Well, I think anytime we're exploring something, and we're newly exploring it, we're going to be a little more hesitant, a little more questioning of ourselves. But I think the more time we spend exploring these things, we certainly pick up, momentum, confidence, or just a certain momentum. And I've noticed that as well. Yes.
So, like, I've gotten more competent at certain things, and so I, display confidence more. Is that what you're saying, Dan?
Yes.
Okay, Shelley, did you mean anything different than that, or only that, or exactly that?
That, as well as just more confident in the way you share your ideas. I think you're less interested in. This is a repeat of what I said, but less interested in convincing anyone and more interested in saying, "Hey, this is what I've discovered. It made my life easier in these regards. Are you interested?" No. Okay, moving on.
Okay.
You're not as offended or put off by anyone who's really not interested. It doesn't seem like you really. I wouldn't say you don't care, but you also are not. You're not like offended is a strong word, but you're not disrupted in any way by the fact that they're not quite interested or ready for the ideas that you want to put out there.
So you were talking, Shelly, about areas in which I have some familiarity or some competence. So I was wondering if you guys were going to comment on confidence outside of a realm of technical expertise, or even outside of a realm of my interest, just like confidence in general. Since we are kind of, we're at least next to that subject. Anybody want to comment on confidence that's not related to a particular, subject? You want to comment on just confidence? Have you noticed any change with that in me? Go ahead.
I've definitely noticed a change in your, what I perceive as your curiosity. You seem interested in other people's point of view, or how they relate to certain situations and how that relationship can help others, or how you can relate to it. It seems like you're more interested in being a group and less, just what you know and what you've done or what you've experienced and how you can help others, but just relating all ideas together. Like you want to expand on what you're competent in and include others that are more competent in certain areas, or that can help.
Okay.
Really.
So how has that changed over the course of around 2 years?
I feel like you're reaching out more. You're seeking more group orientations, more group interactions. You're writing yourself. You're encouraging others to write, and you're sharing things that others write with each other. If you have an interaction with a person that I don't have an interaction with, and I wrote something that you think that is relevant to them, you might share it. That's how I think you've moved. Outside of being, to me, you've always been interested in that idea, but you are moving towards it.
The idea of conversations and group interactions, not just dialogues and monologues.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
You seem like you're actually putting forth the effort to create those types of environments.
Right. Well, other than, I met both of the two of you basically through Facebook, and we interacted on text threads or whatever, just typing messages. And then as time went on, by voice, and the shift as far as back to me, and we started with confidence, and then you jumped into curiosity. It's actually, to me, been like I got to just snowball curiosity that was already there. If I'm ignorant of something and I'm confident in my logical capacity to learn, and I'm interested in something but I'm ignorant, I can still be confident in the general sense, like even saying, who knows something about this? Who's interested in this, or whatever? There's a kind of directness that people can associate with confidence.
Yeah, and I think the confidence is, the further you move into confidence, obviously any kind of maybe arrogance that might even be pretty subtle, you'll get further away from that, obviously. And I think people can pick up on that. At least perceptive people can pick up on that. The difference between confidence and arrogance, so right, the more confident we become, the less we might come off as arrogant, even when we're not trying to. You know what I mean?
Okay. So do you guys think that there was an element of arrogance that decreased for me in the last 2 years?
Yes.
Yes, from Shelly. Dan?
Yes, and even
yes.
videos
Okay.
maybe that are 4 years old, certainly.
Okay,
yes.
Okay, that's true. You have seen some of the older content, or even read some of it. Yeah. Okay, great. Shelly, are you basing your answer on the same kind of long-term point of view, or just in our 2 years of direct interaction?
What I've learned over the 2 years as a director? I mean, no, long-term point of view. I'll say long-term point of view because I have read some of your older stuff, or you've brought forward some of your, older songs and stuff like that. So, but when I met you too, it still relates to the idea that you seemed more. The arrogance to me was associated with what I think is important. You should too.
Right. As now, I'm confidently arrogant on occasion, and I know it. So there you go.
Right.
Yeah, it's more of a playful thing instead of a sincerity thing.
Right, absolutely. That's a great thing to note, Dan. So
just the right amount of arrogance.
Yeah, it is this thing where it's like confidence, but it borders onto a playful arrogance and even dismissiveness or rudeness on occasion. It's just not personal. And I think, Dan, you may have taken some things personally at various times that maybe were not as personal as you thought, right? So
absolutely, yeah.
Or were not meant as personally as you thought, but so be it. And maybe I'm a little wider in my range of, I can be playfully gentle as well. And I don't mean to offer you answers, so I'll just move along a little bit. So the second half of the interview would be kind of the reverse question, and this is where it could get a little longer since we have the both of you on the call, but we can be brief. In the time we've been interacting, again, around 2 years, for each of you, for yourself, like in a self-assessment, self-reporting, what has seemed to change the most about you? One or two things or a few things. How has your own perception of yourself changed? Who's first?
I'll go first. I think that I have become more aware of my patterns in language and how I'm operating in any given moment, which clearly would make me less sincere, or just emotionally triggered, less emotionally triggered, and with that can come a lot of sincerity and a lot of put off a lot of qualities that put other people off, and I think I'm more aware of that. Not to say that I still don't fall back into those patterns, but yeah, you've allowed me to be more aware of what I'm tangled up in, what I get tangled up on, I should say, even language wise, and that allows me to be more perceptive if I or more self aware. I still, like I said, have moments, but I think that I'm just much less sensitive than what I was 2 years ago. And I'm just comparing to that. It doesn't mean that I'm still not overly sensitive at times, but if we compare the last 2 years, I think I've come a decent way in just being less sensitive than I was.
Okay, so when you use the term sensitive, you also use the term perceptive. So it's interesting how you just kind of contrasted them. You're more perceptive of some of your own practices and their results, and your sensitivity to other people's. You want to? Can you say a little bit more about what you mean about how your sensitivity has changed? And I also want to say your sincerity was like, it's really like sincere defensiveness. That's what we were talking about what you were talking about when you said sincerity. It's like a defensiveness kind of sincerity, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And then
yes. Yeah.
With regard to sensitivity, do you want to say a little more about that, or no?
Well, just like even when it comes to like dealing with you and conversations we've had, I mean, I'm taking it less personally. The people have different patterns, different language patterns, different ways of handling things, and it doesn't always have to be personal. Whereas maybe 2 years ago, a lot of the time I would just take it that way without even considering the fact that they're really not trying to be personal about what they're saying. So that the sensitivity is just being more aware that it's not always personal. So maybe sometimes it can be, but it's really not. Most of the time, it's not really personal.
Yeah. So
you know what I mean?
So you're actually you're not as so I brought up this word defensive, but it's also like anxiety. There's not as much concern for are people talking about me, and if they are, what are they saying? Isn't that whole, haven't you relaxed?
Yeah, yeah, I have. No, exactly, and that's what I'm saying is that I can now just take people at face value, until they actually make it overt that they're obviously trying to be disrespectful.
Right.
I
That
don't
can
have
happen.
to just assume they're going to be that way, or if they're the way they're operating has anything to do with me, because most likely it doesn't. But yeah, and maybe 2 years ago I would have thought much differently about that. So
Yeah, that's really interesting how you just set it up like you were responding to people as if they were disrespecting you. If there was anything close to disrespect, you just assume it was, disrespectful toward you personally. And now you're aware that people might be actually disrespectful towards you, but if that's the case, you're much more perceptive about it. So you could say you're
yes,
less sensitive in the sense of like less reactive, but you're actually your sensitivity or your perceptiveness, it may have maybe a lot more attuned now.
yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was set up for each of you to comment on yourself. We can, I'll just say that. Let's conclude that section, and then if we want to go any further, we can. Shelly, what are you ready to talk about? What you've noticed changing in yourself in the last couple of years?
Yes, I am. I feel like I'm more open to foreign ideas, or I don't think I was.
You mean
When you
Canadian?
met me, I don't. What?
I said you mean
Canadian.
Canadian. You can just come out and say it. It's all right.
I like Canadians a little better than I used to.
Really? Okay. No,
Um,
go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
I think I was always sort of open to new ideas and stuff, but I also had a sense of uh, judgment in that, oh, that's really radical. So I'm
Okay.
not really going to give any thought or put any. I'm going to be very dismissive of it, but not outwardly so. I'll listen, but I'm going to be,
You'll
downwardly
politely dismiss
putting,
it. Yeah.
yeah, I'm putting some thought into the development of those ideas, or how A led to B, B led to C led to D, and just actually putting some merit into it. So I think I'm more open in that way. I feel like more empowered than I ever did. Like there's a lot of things that. Well, I'll start with this. There's a lot of words that I associated negatively, like fear, manipulation, naivete. Those words that I associated with, or defensiveness, or any negatively, and I'm much more open or understanding of the idea that those things are important in certain situations. They serve its purpose in certain situations. And you are in control. I am in control. I dictate how I relate to the fear, or how I accept the fear, or how I respond to the fear. And that's not a bad thing. I also feel like those ideas or those concepts that we have learned to associate negatively is something that's you opened me to the idea that that's sort of on purpose. That's a mass thing that a lot of people are hiding behind this shame, or hiding behind this fear, and they're crippled by all these. They're terrified and hysterical about all this fear, and we're all kind of walking around the same way, but hiding it. So I feel much more related to the world than I ever did, much like everyone else. And when I say in the past, what's that?
I just said, huh, but go ahead.
When I said in the past that I didn't feel like I related to other people,
Yeah.
I felt like I was more scared.
Right.
Than, or I was more timid, or I was more naive, or I was more stupid, or any of those things. I just felt like would worse off in those areas than others, and
Uh-huh.
I was seemed to be wanting to hide it.
Right.
Now I feel like we're all scared. We're all, for different reasons, and let's talk about it. It seems much more empowering to talk about it, much more empowering to acknowledge it and say it's okay, and not be so. And that shame, that release of the shame, has been the key factor to me to be more empowering and confident that we're all ashamed for one reason or another. Is it really that, I wouldn't say embarrassing, but is it really that different than the average, than everyone else?
Right. That idea that it's incredibly unusual to experience fear or shame is a really odd idea.
Right. And just experience the vulnerability of just talking about it.
Mm-hmm. So
it helps relieve that pressure we put on ourselves. So the empowerment, I feel like it's all, so much of our tangles and confusions is centered around us and what we do to ourselves, the pressure we put on ourselves.
Okay.
So that's the empowerment that I think I've discovered, and that it's okay to depend on others. It's okay to have expectations from others.
As long as you're not assertive,
okay.
it's all right. Yeah.
I'm still working on the assertive part. So those are the ways that changed, I think.
There's other ways that changed?
No, those are the ways, the major ways that changed.
Yeah.
And understand the simplicity of things, too.
Uh-huh. That's cool. Yeah, that's and go ahead.
No,
you mentioned experiencing vulnerability and empowerment, and you didn't use the word courage, but I just want to note a lot of what you're talking about is a shift from having fear and not really talking about it, for instance, like, just it's there, and then to be able to talk about it, and then to be able to make other choices even in the presence of fear. That's what I'm, as you know, I've used that kind of a definition for courage. It's not the absence of fear, it's action along with the experience of fear. It's an openness to fear, and when there's an openness to fear, then fear can help to move our, shift our focus and bring us to alertness about new dangers or dangers that we didn't notice previously, and that is a useful thing.
And so relaxing into that, it opens up so many more avenues or possibilities. It doesn't feel like you're stuck as much.
So you could call that what? You said relax, but Dan, you want to jump in?
I would call that personal power or freedom.
Freedom is the first thing I thought of. It personal power totally fits, and Shelly said empowerment. We're all coming close to the same idea with a few different words. So we could wrap up here, and if we need to for timing or any other reason, we can. There's a little more that I was going to ask you about me. I think I might not do that just yet. I'm going to ask you guys to make a comment or acknowledgement of the other, and you can be brief, or if you want, take. How are you doing on time? Everybody okay with the several more minutes?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So if you want to take a few minutes, feel free. So most recently, Shelly was just reporting about herself. Dan, do you want to comment on what she said? Was that your experience of her? Was that I think it's kind of clear for anybody listening that a lot of what we're talking about is similar for all of us. But I just wanted to give you two the opportunity to talk to each other for giving feedback about what you've noticed change since I brought up the subject. So, Dan, do you want to start in commenting on what you've noticed with Shelly?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that the whole courage thing and facing that fear of having expectations not being met, having disappointed expectations. I think that just like me, absolutely, that she might have had some problems in the past with dealing with those kind of things, and not necessarily using courage at all times. You know what I
And
mean?
I want to
So,
just note when we're talking about expectations, we don't mean this in a super general sense. We're not talking about the Democratic Party or something. We're talking about everyday life, most important relationships we have. Uh, just to bring it home a little bit. So go ahead, Dan.
yeah, and I would have to say, like, the part that she spoke about connectedness. No, I couldn't know how that has affected her life and the difference. But I mean, I don't necessarily feel that way. I mean, that's the one part that stuck out to me when she was talking, because maybe I should feel that way, like, maybe, but I don't, and I think that's because I haven't been very courageous. You know what I mean? Although I've come a long way in the last 2 years, I'm not probably any more courageous in dealing with my own insecurities or fear in social situations. You know what I mean? I still will withdraw very, very easily, which isn't really as necessary as it used to be. It used to be a thing where, it was for my own well-being almost at some point, you know what I mean, to withdraw from different, social situations. But now it really isn't about that as much anymore. But I don't know how that's changed in her life. I mean, I'm glad it has. Everything that she said, I'm glad that everything, is.
Okay, let me jump in here. So you're saying that for yourself, you still have patterns of withdrawing, and you're aware of the possibility to, do things differently. Like, you're free to, but you do it when you do, and you don't when you don't. You were saying that, and I kind of want to acknowledge that piece of it. If you want to comment on that, you can. But let's say you hadn't heard what Shelly just said about how she's changed in the last 2 years. I'm going to just, of course you did, and we can come back to that. But let's say you hadn't heard what she had just said. So we just start from scratch. Tell me, how has your experience of Shelly, like how has your perception of her changed in the last couple of years? It can be pretty brief, but what are a couple major changes you've noticed?
Confidence being one big one. Just her tone of voice, just her maybe even her assertiveness. I mean,
Yeah.
We all probably still could work on some things there, but I mean it's definitely improved. And I've noticed that just in our conversations. Those are the big things I could notice, very easily.
Mm-hmm. So why do you say, so you said something in her tone of voice. Why do you say confidence and assertiveness? You want to maybe give a little more of the background? Why do you, what have you noticed that brought you to that conclusion or that experience?
Well, when we first started talking, way back when, and actually talking, because tone of voice, obviously you got to be voice, talking, but I mean, yeah, I think that there's a little more hesitance, and sometimes when she would say things, where now she, is very, she seems more comfortable in her own, her own ideas, whatever she's trying to share. She seems more comfortable than she did a year ago whenever we started the Skype calls. I think it was roughly around then.
Yeah, very close. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think she's, she seems more comfortable sharing.
Okay. So I get that as confidence. Can you say a little bit more about assertiveness? Like she's just, if I ask her questions, she answers. There's confidence in that. What about assertiveness?
I don't think that I remember, that she used to maybe look to what you had to say about what she thought, way back a year ago or whatever that was. I think she would, she just really would concern herself with what you thought of what she was saying. I mean, that's what I picked up. I could be completely wrong about that.
Okay.
But that's kind of something I picked up, and I don't necessarily pick that up nearly as much anymore.
Okay. That's cool. I get that. That's way more precise of an answer than just saying assertiveness. So thanks.
Yes.
So Dan, anything else you want to jump in? Because I was going to turn it over to Shelly for a second.
No, I'm good.
So, Shelly, I don't know if you've ever heard that feedback. I don't think Dan's ever said it, in private to me in regard to you. What are your thoughts on what he just said?
I'm surprised. I definitely I agree with some of the things you said, and that I feel more confident in what I'm talking about. The assertive part, I didn't necessarily get. I certainly see what he's talking about with my hesitation about. I was always hesitant or unsure about how I perceive things. I lacked confidence in my own intuition, and I totally agree there. The assertiveness that I was hoping would grow out of that, coming out of that phase of not trusting my own instincts or my intuition, I didn't think I made very much headway yet. So I'm appreciative of what he said, because I don't find myself assertive. I find myself confused and still sort of hesitant and unsure of what I'm doing. So I'm appreciative to hear that I did improve in that area. I did come some way in that area of assertiveness.
Okay, so as far as trusting your intuition, there's two things. You have to have an intuition and then trust it. So if there's no intuition, you don't have to automatically have a clear intuition just because, I don't know, sometimes there's a clear intuition and sometimes there isn't. There's, a kind of a neutrality, right? So when there is a some kind of intuition, you're actually looking for it, you're trusting it, and that's exactly what we're talking about as far as confidence. And then when you take action based on, for instance, an intuition, that's assertive, whether it's in speaking or in deed. Assertiveness doesn't have to be in talking, right? Even though we talk about, I assert that, blah blah blah, but that's Dan, you'd agree assertiveness can be like, you just walk up to the counter. I'm trying to think of an example of this, but it's like, I was shopping today, and you just pick up some stuff off the rack and you go try it on and look at it. You don't stand there and walk around the rack over and over and over. You just say, okay, well, I'm not sure if I like these, but I'm going to pick these up. I'm going to go over to the dressing room. I'm going to try this on, right? That's assertive.
Yeah, and I think, we'll use Amy's dad as an example. It doesn't always have to be about language. He knew that Amy was a big fan of Brett Kiesel with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yep.
And he put himself and his daughter in a position to where they can meet him. I mean, so it wasn't really about, of course, once they saw him, then he did say, can you take a picture with her or whatever? But I'm saying he had to be in that position way before he said anything.
I didn't know that. So, like, they had to stand where the players would be walking. They had to stand near that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. Huh. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, that's just, knowing what you want and making it happen. That's assertiveness. Or you can, associate assertiveness with that whole idea.
Yeah.
Shelly, we're kind of jumping around a little bit. So, so based on what I said, having an intuition is a different issue. Like how intuitive you are or whatever, that's a different issue from trust and confidence and so on. So, do you want to comment on that at all?
Comment on.
Well, you shifted from being hesitant about your intuition. You had some, and you were hesitant about them, and now you've actually, you're more welcoming of your own intuition. I mean, that is a pretty significant thing. It doesn't necessarily make you more intuitive, but it's an interesting detail. Go ahead.
It is a huge detail for me, because there's a lot of intuitions that I've had that I have talked myself out of, or sabotaged myself out of, that have come true. And going through the practice of being burned over and over again has certainly made me more aware of my intuition and more trusting of it. Just the trial and error that I've gone through has made me much more trusting of myself and trusting of my thought process and how the cycle of my analysis works in a certain situation is not as dramatic or not as when a certain level of fear kicks in for me. A lot of times there's a reason that fear is kicking in for me, and I try to talk myself out of it and say I'm over seeing things that are there, and just now I'm realizing to trust that a lot more, and I'm much safer, I think, even if I'm wrong and I err on the side of caution. It's a much safer way to handle yourself or handle myself than to avoid or talk myself out of my innate or my internal feeling. Because that feeling I'm realizing is there for a reason.
Okay.
And I should trust it.
You can, right. So, Dan, did you ever notice what you could think of as Shelly talking herself out of her instincts or intuitions and so on?
Well, yeah.
Dan, right? Not me.
Yes, Dan?
Yes, I have noticed she's not perfect.
No, I mean, in the past, have you heard, like, she'll say something, she's or written or whatever, she's expressed something and then put things around it to, like, pre-diminish her own, thing, right? Do you know what I'm saying, Dan?
Yes.
Do you remember that happen? And then as time goes on, like it's the respect for intuition that then you notice it, and then you're it's just an interesting dynamic. Courage is totally in there. Trust is in there. I wanted to bring up the word respect. That's what I'm really hearing. Dan, comment?
And yes, I mean, I have noticed, her doing that, but I've also noticed myself doing that as well.
Great.
And I think it also has to do with at least the perception of being burned. Whether that was a fair and accurate perception or not doesn't matter. The perception was there of being burned, time and time again. And I do think that we lose, confidence, we lose respect for our own internal, I can relate to that completely.
What I was imagining you were about to say a moment ago, Dan, was respect for our own experience. So if I'm afraid, if I'm angry, if I'm happy, whatever it may be, to respect that.
Yeah.
And as odd and simple a thing as that may seem, it's a profound thing to have that shift where there's a big change in how much I respect my own experience, my own intuition, etc. All of that, right?
Yes.
So we're jumping around. We're talking about some philosophical points, some historical personal commentary here. So Dan, anything else you want to acknowledge as far as a change you've noticed in Shelly in the last couple of years?
No, I don't. Not that I can think of.
Yeah. Okay. Shelly, your turn. What do you want to note as far as the big changes you've noticed in Dan?
I have noticed that his interest in experimentation has skyrocketed. You're experimenting with language. You are testing the waters. You are much more to me, it appears that you're much more in control with what you put out there and how you're putting out your feelers in certain patterns of language, and then seeing the response. It seems like when I first met you, you weren't as relaxed about it. You were more. It was kind of like you were on a locomotive train, and you didn't really care what was in the path. So you were just going 100 miles an hour, and you didn't really care, and this is how you felt, and that's what mattered. And for me, you're still feeling or experiencing what you're experiencing, but you're putting different spins on it, or you're looking at it from different points of view. You're slowing down and actually assessing the whole the thing, whatever it is in its entirety, and you're even going out on Facebook and talking about it some, maybe not in a direct way, but you're talking about it some, and you're interested in what other people have to say or interested in certain points of view. You're much more open. You're much more, in my opinion, I know you don't see it this way, but you're much more interested in connecting. To me, you're less fearful in making a connection than you were. You seem very, very aware of others and you're very aware of what you're looking for in others or certain characteristics in others that you're looking for, and you have stopped to survey, stopped to take it in, you stopped to feel it out. And to me, your connections are very apparent, in my opinion. They're very apparent, and it's a drastic difference from what I saw 2 years ago. It's like you wanted to connect but didn't care to stop and actually do it. And you've done that now. You actually connecting with people, and you're actually expressing yourself and disagreeing with people and not and feeling comfortable in that, feeling comfortable with having a disagreement and then moving past that. You're even comfortable with completely disagreeing and deciding I don't want to connect with you anymore, and then tomorrow saying, okay, well, I changed my mind. You think, okay, so let's reconnect. You're really confident in doing that, and you're really confident in acknowledging that experience, and that's a really cool thing to just take that experience and put it out there and say, hey, you know what? I'll be there in a minute, okay? Sorry. I lost my train of thought.
Take that experience and just
say it for what it is. You know, I got into a discussion with you yesterday, and it bothered me because of X, Y, and Z. And today I'm having a different set of eyes on that, and I realized that maybe what was actually happening was A, B, and C, or one way I can look at it is, this way, and I'm ready to talk about that more, or I'm not ready to talk about that more, but I'm ready to talk to you more, or, anything like that. You seem so much more confident in exposing that experience for what it is. What is it? I'm sorry, can you guys hang on for 1 second?
Yeah, let us know when you're back. Let us know when you're back. Yeah. So I was gonna ask Shelly to narrow it down to just a couple, couple comments of what she's noticed change. Boil it down, right? I don't know if Shelly's able to hear us right now, but Dan, I can, of course. What's your thoughts or experiences in just listening to what she said?
Well, yeah, I mean, I certainly can see what she's saying, and I think some of the things I said earlier about how I've changed about myself, I think that a lot of what she was saying matches up, different terminology, but a lot of it matches up. I think the one thing I would have liked to have touched on is she said I'm more confident in what I want to, the people that I want to connect with.
Uh-huh.
And what I realize is what I'm looking for in other people, or not looking for it, but what it sticks out to me in other people is what I want for myself.
Yeah.
As far as being open-minded and just being open to what other people have to, their experiences and their opinions, and just being more open with that. And that's what I'm also, I don't want to say looking for, but that's what sticks out to me in other people when I meet people.
Right.
So there's a connection there. You know what I mean?
You immediately notice when people are relaxed, when people are rigid, when people are defensive, when people are perceptive. Those are just things that are right there for you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Previously, you mentioned being more like expecting disrespect, and that really is a big shift. And if I'm expecting disrespect, then I'm going to be tense, right? I'm going to be that much, that much quicker to be defensive or withdraw, right?
Right, and not only that, but that tenseness will be picked up by other people. And what do you think is going to happen? That's going to make them more tense if they're feeling that I'm tense. So yeah, it's kind of like a what do you call it? what am I trying to say? That in my tenseness, I might actually set myself up to other people around me might feel that that I'm tense and be tense themselves, and that might lead to not a positive conversation. So we can actually set the groundwork for for just an uncomfortable situation for ourselves. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, so people can be left with a sense of tension. So there's just this anxiety or tension there. There's the word connection we've used a lot. We haven't used the word affinity or intimacy, in this little conversation today. But there's this whole spectrum from defensiveness, kind of pushing people away, well, obviously running away or withdrawing from people, but like being I don't know, protective or defensive, but there's something else where you just like being really reserved, right? It's like a
Right.
wall. It's not a bad thing. It's just a notable thing. I mean, sometimes that's the reason that it happens, right? Must be because it works sometimes to be reserved. But in addition to being reserved, there's also connecting. There's also experiencing ongoing connection with people, as distinct from just connecting in a moment, like with even with a stranger. You can just connect with somebody, right? And then there's
Right.
affinity, there's intimacy, there's this whole range, this whole spectrum. So to go from being really shy or really irritable or any of those kind of things towards uh, a moderate level or even towards, another extreme, that's available, and it can take a little time, but it can be very fast. Um, Shelly, are you back on? Okay. Dan, anything to say before we see if Shelly has a comment?
No, that's all I had to say.
So, Shelly, you heard most of what Dan and I just said, yes?
Part, not much.
Okay. Well, any comments on what we did say or what we should have said that we might not have?
No, I agree with what you said, what I heard.
Okay. All right. So wow, this has been 52 minutes so far. So, as I said, there were a couple other questions. The shortest way for me to do the other questions is like a 1 to 10 scale. So I can blow through them in a 1 to 10 scale. Okay, you ready for this? And then we'll be wrapping up pretty quick. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
In regard to how much fun, you can just shout out your answers on a 1 to 10 scale.
10 being the
10 being the
highest.
most, yeah. In regard to how much fun you have witnessed me having across the last 2 years, am I having more fun, 10, or less fun, 1, or about the same, 5, relative to when you first started interacting with me?
7.
8.
9. No, okay. 7 and 8. Well, cool. All right, that was your answer. How about for yourself? This is for you individually. So Shelly answers for Shelly, Dan answers for Dan. Are you having more fun, 10, less fun, 1, or about the same amount of fun, 5, as when you were back then 2 years ago? Dan.
I have to go with 9 for myself,
Holy.
only because the negative was so much greater 2 years ago. Like there would be fun moments, but then there would be just some moments of not so much fun. Let's put it that way.
I get it. That's cool. So, so you have access to having fun most any time.
Right.
Previously, the what do you call it? The resilience for you to go from not having fun to being able to make jokes and have fun, that was not great 2 years ago, right?
That's correct.
I get that that's what you're saying, and that's awesome because you've always been pretty, you've been pretty fun, but I get how the whole thing fits. I appreciate that answer. Shelly, you can comment on what I just said if you want. Do you want to?
No, I agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, on a scale of 1 to 10 for your own self, more fun, less fun, same amount as around 2 years ago, across the whole 2 year period, what's your 1 to 10 scale, Shelly?
I'm going to go 7.5.
Wow, 7.5. Such a rebel. Has to put in the half digit there. Can't go with an integer and whole number.
I had to put the half digit.
Like,
because I wanted to go in
Well,
I wanted to go because I think I could have more fun, but I also think I've come a long way.
I was thinking you just wanted special attention for being unusual there with the 7.5, but um, so why I actually so why in between 7 and like why is it that high or why is it that low? Whatever. So give us a little background, Shelly.
I think I was much more timid and reserved and not quite open to my experience when I first started interacting with you. And now I'm more confident in my experience or more willing to share what my experience is and more willing to say, okay, this didn't work out for me or that didn't work out for me. So what's a better way to approach it the next time? Or, just get feedback or advice from people and admit
Get what advice?
failures.
Feedback or advice. Okay.
Feedback or advice from others and also admit failures or, admit missteps. So, and the humor part of it, I'm not as funny as you two, so I can't say that I'm funnier in any way. I just
we think you're hilarious.
I think I just go with the flow better than I used to. So this is the scale. That's how I'm accepting the scale for me at 7.5.
I also think that leaves like another 2.5 points to increase it, and that's cool. That's pretty cool. So whoever told me I was a 7, I was like 7, really? Well, that leaves 3 points, so that's pretty cool. Okay. So let's see.
Shell, you're hilarious. Oh, go ahead. What? No, I'm just being stupid. Sorry. Go ahead.
That was okay. That was good. Let's see. I'm reading my little questions here. So if you were to speculate about the source of the change, what sources would you speculate are the source of the change? Fun and everything else we talked about. You can be brief. What do you guys want to say on that? That you haven't already said, or that you have already said.
I'm actually confusing the question. The source of the change of what?
Like the fun thing is really what I had in mind when I wrote the question. Why did you go from however you were to a 9 in fun? I guess we're saying your baseline was 5 2 years ago, and now you're up to a 9. Then why? Yeah.
And I think it's because because like I said, I don't go from having fun one moment and then the next moment to being offended.
Okay.
It's not gonna, it's not as quick like that. It's not like bipolar, defensiveness. I mean, there's still moments of that, but there's so much fewer that's why my number jumped up quite a bit.
Yeah. If you were to pick like practices or things that were the source of that change, anything come to mind? What do you want to say about why? Not why, but how? Yeah.
Well, I mean, just accepting, and just being able to admit that I may be naive or may have said something foolish. I know that's crazy. No one would believe that, but just being able to just be okay with it. I mean, yeah, I say a lot of foolish things, and that's okay. And also not to take things as personal. So I can, when something's said now that you say it, it doesn't have to be a personal thing. I mean, I don't have to take it personal and be defensive and be aggressive, back. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Shelly, what do you think of as the source of your rise to 7.5 on the fun scale?
I think just being able to hear others, the experience of others, and the relatability to that, the relationships that I see there, realizing that I'm just like everyone else, and I can relate to them in a lot of ways, and we can help each other, that we're all in it together, and we can help each other. So I was able to relax, able to put myself out there much easier and be more open and go with the flow. Also, just what Dan was saying, not taking things as personally or being so hurt by certain things that weren't necessarily meant to hurt or weren't necessarily really as dramatic as I perceived it to be. So those kinds of things help me go with the flow better.
With your comments, Shelly, I also think it's important sometimes to allow for the experience of hurt and seclusion and safety, and to really make a haven occasionally or frequently so that I can just really decompress. I use that term sometimes, decompress.
Yeah, right.
And be able to, focus on one-on-one or just by myself or whatever, or if it is a group, to have time for a group, even that, Sometimes you got to make. Go ahead.
I definitely agree with that. The allowing the experience as a hurt or just embracing it, and because the more you resist, the harder it is to overcome or to move forward with. Allowing the experience for certain is a good source. You just pointed out. Embracing the experience, that's a really good source of what helped me go from a 5 to a 7.5.
And it really does make a difference to have other people. When you're talking about relating to other people's stories or experiences, Shelly, you got to have other people sharing. And sometimes you've got to share and have them say, "Oh, that reminds me of this thing that happened with me." There is a lot that shifts through communication, and some things shift through withdrawal and seclusion and decompressing individually. Dan and I have done more writing than Shelly hasn't done. As I'm not aware of much writing that you've really done, other than maybe in response to him or I and things like that. But but now that I say that, you totally have written. Whether it's speaking or typing or writing or whatever, you've definitely put out historical details and gone through, here's my thought process, here's my experience, here's what I think it means, here's what I wish would be, or whatever, just processing, right? Sharing. And when you do that, even if you write it and there's nobody in real time listening to you and giving you feedback, any of that process, it can produce learning. And if you don't share it and you don't write it out or make a video or whatever, if you don't do anything with your experience, then it's like a resource that you've just kind of packed it away. And it's okay to have it packed away. You don't have to experience sadness or fear or whatever at any given time. It's totally fine to store it. Or it can be great to store it. And you can use it as a resource, share it with other people. That's part of how we connect as humans, is by sharing, well, obviously sharing our experience, but including sharing our challenges, right? So I think I'm gonna skip to a question that isn't on my list, and then we'll conclude. What I asked, so you rated me. Could you say a little bit more about why you rated me, whatever you rated me, as far as more fun? Who remembers what they said as the score?
I said 7.
Okay, Dan said a 7. Shelly said an 8. Let's start with Dan. You're the lower number. So, what did you observe or notice that had you give me a 7, indicating that I've had more fun than I had in the past, a couple years ago?
Well, it does go back to your own clarity and your own confidence. But it also is obviously, when we're talking about conversational thing, my comfortableness does affect your number. You know what I mean? So if I'm able to take what you say is not personal, then I can have a lot more fun with that than if I have to be like, oh, wait a minute, now how did he mean that? Like, should I
right,
be up in arms about that, or should I say something about that?
So we had fun together. You didn't just observe me having fun with other people. You're talking about us having fun, right?
Or just other people on Facebook or whatever too. Yeah, I'm talking about. But in that regard, in regard to me and you, yes, that affects how comfortable I am does affect that number. But yeah, but I mean, even watching you with other people, you know, you're just more precise in what you say. And I, you know, if somebody is very perceptive, then that can be a good thing. You know what I mean?
Yes. Do you want to say a little more? It's a if I'm precise, then how does that connect to having fun?
Well, it just means that you might just be more aware of how the other person is being affected by what you're saying. You know
Okay,
what I mean?
so I'm perceptive about them. The other thing I thought of is if I can be really precise, then it can be fun to be imprecise in my speaking or to be even overly precise or to make fun of precision. Like it becomes this whole nother subtext of humor, right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes I might even do that. You know what I
You
mean?
might.
I don't know. You know, I might intentionally be with something like me and you're going back and forth. I might intentionally say something I know is very imprecise. You know?
I mean, lately I've just been blatantly like sarcastic, you know, two lines, no introduction, just huge turn on the full jets of sarcasm. You know, that's I'm like jumping right into that a lot. I mean, just in the last few weeks is what I'm thinking of. I've done that a lot lately, and it's working fine for me. um, anything else, Dan?
No, that's all.
So Shelly, you gave me an 8 rather than a 7. Do you want to first of all comment on what Dan said, and then maybe I assume you might have something to add to give me an 8 instead of a 7?
Yes, I definitely agree with what Dan said, and I also think I find you more calm and interested in responses, and you're fine tuned or more precise, just what Dan said, more precise in caring and interpreting and responding to what a person says, rather than an idea, a grand idea that you might have, or get carried away with something, a thought that is related. You know, if that makes sense, it's just more precise and fine tuned, and you're interested in that person. You're gauging your response based on that person. So I think you're calmer, precise, more relaxed, more interested, and you also fine tune to me what you're looking for in others, what you're seeking in terms of openness, levels of openness, levels of awareness, levels of perceptiveness. You seemed much more fine-tuned in that aspect, so you're calmer in your approach to other people too. And I think that's and more you experiment a lot with how you gently experiment with others to see how they respond to certain, if they respond well to sarcasm or if they respond well to real, like, you know, direct ideas, if they respond well to blogs that you might post or songs, or, you know, you're interested in their feedback. And I think that makes it more fun for you because I think I've said before, just pushing through all the extraneous stuff and getting to what it is that you're looking for.
Okay. Dan, I hear some noise there. You had something to say?
Well, honestly, I was just going to get ready to leave here, so that's
okay.
all.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
okay.
Unfortunately.
I just heard, like, you know, the sound that you had some background noise there. So, cool. Thank you guys for, well, Shelly, thanks for what you said there. I'm glad also that you mentioned the thing about experimenting, because I got everything you were saying and I didn't connect it to fun. Instead, you specifically until you mentioned experimenting, and then I got how being calm and all those other things allows for me to, you know, having fun in many cases is having fun with other people. So there has to be a relatedness to a group of people, some audience that I'm imagining if I'm writing a song or something. You know, there's got to be like, well, it works very well sometimes to, you know, have fun in engagement with other people. There are times when I just think a joke's hilarious without regard for anybody. I see something, I laugh. But anyway, to actually have fun or create fun, that is, I gotta do it with people who are, you know, able to have fun in that range of the same joke, you know, so I can have my, you know, juvenile male humor with Dan and anybody else who can relate to that, and you know, whatever other, you know, word games or whatever other stuff it is for other people. So, um, uh, all right, well, I don't know. Dan needs to get going, I guess. So, what do we want to say in closing, Dan or Shelly? Go ahead.
This was a cool experience. The interview was cool. The questions were cool. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate the feedback that I received, and appreciated the interest in what I perceived for you guys.
Yeah. Well, it is a unique thing that, you know, the kind of you could say experiments that we've been doing with each other. It's a pretty, you know, unusual thing. Like this isn't what we haven't done this before. We haven't been doing this all our lives and so on. So it's a resource like that, you know, I was saying a minute ago, or it's an opportunity at least. Dan?
Yeah, I would say that this is a lot of fun. You know, it's like a 7 or 8. You know,
Maybe
but,
7.5.
I do appreciate the feedback as well and the opportunity to do this because, as you said, I've never done. You know, this is a new experience for me, and you know, I've appreciated the last couple of years with the both of you. So, you know, I look forward to you know, more things more fun in the future. Right? I want 10. I'm looking for 10.
I hear that, man. I believe you. I'm looking for, you know, I'm looking for maybe a 9.2 because you know, I just want to make the Olympic team and then I'll be good from there. You know, put it on my gravestone and made the Olympic team, got a 9.2. All right. Got to represent his state, his country. All right. Well, thanks for, you know, joining and sharing, and I'll let you go, Dan. And nice talking to you guys both again. I had fun as well. All right. Best wishes. Happy New Year. Bye.